Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to do my January reads video and everything that I read. I did not get to all my TBR. I'm so sorry. I wanted to be one of those YouTubers who actually did their TBR, not the ones that always missed it. But I really tried so hard. Gone with the Wind, as you guys know, is so long, so I am not done with that. I'm still reading it, but I do really like it so far, so I will do a review for that one. I did not get through Though Waters Roar or Night yet, and I didn't do The Scarlet Princess yet. So I also swapped out my Crescent City book for another Moon book. I'm sorry. I really wanted to read Crescent City, but I'm just a little intimidated by it, and so I just haven't gotten to it yet. I have so many NetGalley books I'm trying to get through because there's some books I'm really wanting to read. And so if you know anything about NetGalley, your rating really matters. And so I'm just trying to get that rating up so that I can get some books that I'm really wanting. So I have my paper here of my books that I've read this month, and I will insert pictures up here to let you know and the ratings and everything below them. But the first book that I read this month was Gone Girl, and that was a 3-star for me, and my friends absolutely love this book. I know it's a movie. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, and the biggest thing I would say for me is the cussing was just way too much, and for me personally, I just feel like if a book has that all throughout constantly, I feel like it's just poor writing. There's just so many other descriptions you can give, and I just felt like it was every few sentences, and so it was starting to frustrate me, and I was having a hard time getting through it. The next one is The Night is Normal, and I gave this one 5 stars. I really loved this one. It was a Christian read, and it's about how to get through obviously hard situations, and I felt like there are so many books on faith, which is great and it's super important, but I also feel like there's not a lot of books on what to do when your prayers aren't answered like you wanted them to be. And this book was just so great at tackling that subject and disillusionment and just reframing our mind and how God uses those situations to really show His grace and His mercy and His love, and we are able to grow from it and to just reframe our beliefs into more biblical ones. And just, I feel like our relationship with God grows stronger through our struggles, and so I felt like it was just such a great book on helping you get through some tough times. The next one was Finding Me by Viola Davis. This was an audiobook for me, and I really, really liked it. I felt like it was a little graphic, so I caution you when you're going into this book, but it is her real life, so just keep that in mind. I do not rate memoirs. I feel that you can't rate someone's life story, so I never rate those, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I felt like it was very moving. And just to get that background on how she got to where she is was very inspiring. The next one I read was Darling Girls, and I got this off NetGalley. It's from Sally Hepworth. I have a few Sally Hepworth books, and I normally enjoy her, but this book I just didn't love. I felt it just kind of fell flat for me. It was following 3 sisters. Well, they're not biological sisters, but they grew up in foster care together, and so they become like sisters to each other, and they went through some hardships together in this really messed up foster home. The foster mom was just not a good mom, and there was a lot of things going on that were not good, and so years later they find bones underneath that house, and they're trying to figure out what exactly happened here. And so they're all brought into questioning, and they haven't been back to this foster home since. And I thought it was okay. up until the end when it was giving the perspective of the foster mom. And I just felt like it was very dark and let me down. And I just cringed. And if she would have left off that ending, I may have rated it higher, but that really bothered me. So if you have trigger warnings, especially with childhood trauma, abuse, psychological abuse, foster care system type of thing, I would really caution you to look them up and maybe not read this one. The next one is Behind Closed Doors. This one I absolutely loved. My best friend Megan had me read this book, and I am so glad I did. This was a thriller, and I believe that I read it in one day. I'm pretty sure. I stayed awake reading it. I loved it so much. I hadn't read anything similar to a book like this, and I gave it 5 stars. So my best friend was very excited because typically me and her are a little different on our taste, and so she was super excited to finally get a book that I loved, and so that was really funny to share with her. But I really enjoyed it, and I felt like it was fast-paced, and there were moments that were slow, but I couldn't figure out what was going on for like the first half, and then finally I caught on, and it reminds me of The Housemaid, sort of. So if you like The Housemaid, I would try this one out. The next one is How to Keep House While Drowning. So I wanted to read this self-help book because I struggle sometimes with just staying on top of house chores, especially because I'm a mom of 3, if you didn't know. And I just am not, this type of person who likes to clean all the time. I keep things clean, but not, as much as others. And so I just wanted to see if this had any tips on getting on top of it easier, just staying motivated to do it. And I was kind of let down by this book. I gave it 3 stars, and I think this would be a great book for people who suffer a lot with anxiety or depression or trauma that has affected their ability to want to clean or their motivation. But for me personally, I have struggled with anxiety, so I do relate to it to some degree, and it was also touching on postpartum depression, so it's great for that as well. I never really struggled with that. So I just didn't relate too much, and it was really great. It was really great for those struggling psychologically. I feel this is very gentle and encouraging. But I felt like what I was looking for was a little bit more tips on how to just make things a little bit easier. And I just didn't get a lot of useful tips in this one, so that is why I didn't really love it. The next book I read was The Hawthorne Legacy. This was on my TBR, so yay, I read one. And I gave this one 4 stars. I am loving Inheritance Game series, and now I just have the final Gambit to read, and I'm really excited. I just got that in the library, so I'm hoping to get to that this month. But I really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy this one as much as the first one, maybe because the first one everything was new and exciting, but this one I felt wasn't as exciting as the first one for me personally. Now, I know a lot of other people differ in that, and they actually like the second one better. So if you didn't love the first one, you may love the second one, and we may just differ on that opinion. The next one that I read was The Enchanted, and I'm not going to go into this much because I have a whole video on my channel with Leah going over the book Enchanted that you can read, and it was 2 videos ago, so go catch that video. And I go into way more detail about that book, but I gave that one 2 stars. The next one is Better Than the Movies. I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. This was on my Valentine's TBR. I got a head start on it, and I thought it was so cute. It's a high school romance, and the girl in Better Than the Movies is trying to get this guy's attention, and so she fake dates one of her friends, and they're kind of like enemies to lovers as well because they've picked on each other their whole life. And it's super cute high school romance, clean. And so if you're into a YA romance, you would probably really like this one. This is one that a lot of people 5-starred. The next one is Court of Darkness, and I gave this one 3 stars. This was my moon book for my TBR that I chose. I got this off Kindle Unlimited, and I thought it was actually pretty good. It was a good 3 stars. So for me, just so you know, I rate a lot of books that I actually really enjoyed 3 stars. So 3 is not bad for me. It can be bad. Like sometimes my 3s can be bad, but I'll say, but for the most part, a 3 star is good for me or just okay. So this one I thought was good, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was fast-paced, but I didn't love it, and I think that would just be because it was a little confusing. I feel there wasn't a lot of world building, and so it left a lot to be desired. I do think that it was interesting and fast-paced, so I was able to get through it quickly. It kept my interest enough to read it all the way, but it wasn't, my favorite fantasy read that I've read. And this is following Ariana, who is going into this competition. And so I think that was the other thing is like I've read a lot of competition reads in fantasy lately. And so this just wasn't the best one I've read of that storyline. The next one is Holding Out for a Gyro. This I got on NetGalley, and I did not enjoy this one. This is a romance read. I gave it 2 stars. I felt that Chelsea, the main character, was just awful. I did not like her character at all. I thought there were a lot of moments of humor that were really cute and funny. I loved the little list games that she played, but I couldn't enjoy it because I did not like the main character, sadly. Chelsea, I felt, was selfish, and I just felt like she was very unforgiving and just really turned me off, and I just could not enjoy it. I also don't like the one night stand trope, and this had that in it, and so that's just not for me. The next book is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This one I gave 5 stars. I listened on audiobook. Highly recommend the audiobook. It's so good. Probably the best audiobook I've ever listened to. The narrators are incredible. And this one is following Pippa, who does basically she has to do a senior project, and she decides to go back in time to solve a murder that happened several years ago as her senior project that she felt wasn't properly solved. And so she constructs all these interviews of all these people and finds out a lot of things by the end. There are so many plot twists. I thought for sure I had this figured out, and I did not get it right at all. I was completely wrong. And it was, up till the very end, I didn't know what was happening. It was really good. And this is a YA series. The next one I read, the last one of January, which was epic, was The Woman by Kristen Hanna. This is her new book coming out here next week on February 7th. And I loved this book. I always love Kristen Hanna's. They're auto buys for me. And this was following Frankie, who went into the army as a nurse in the Vietnam War. And she is basically going through a lot of trauma and just horrible things that happened, obviously, in war in Vietnam. Comes back and deals a lot with the after effects of that, and then also the way that people were treated when they got back from the war was just absolutely devastating. I personally, because I'm a lot younger, I did not know that people were treated so horribly after the Vietnam War. I had no idea. I was in school. I did not pay attention. I was horrible in school. Now I love history, and I love reading about it in the form of historical fiction because it keeps your interest more than just straight nonfiction. But I didn't know that, and I felt so ashamed that I didn't know that. And it just gives me such a greater respect for Vietnam vets, and what they went through and how they were treated after is just an absolute tragedy. And I was heartbroken. A lot of this book, I was crying. And it'd been a while since I really cried in a book, and this one really got to me. And so I gave it 4 stars, and I will say normally Kristen Hanna books are 5 stars for me, and the only reason I didn't was because I felt like the book was too long. It dragged on too long for me. I think it should have ended sooner. And I also felt like the main character just couldn't catch a break. Like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And so it made it a little bit unrealistic to me, because while I get a lot of bad things happen in war, that makes sense. But afterwards, when she came home, I felt like things were still bad, where things were still happening to her. And it just seemed super unlikely that this would happen this much. Not saying it couldn't happen, but just very unlikely. And so that kind of dragged me out of the story a little bit towards the end, and I wasn't loving it. But I gave it 4 stars because for the first half the book I thought was epic. And I felt that the end was good enough that I stayed at 4 stars, because it really touched on PTSD, which I think was really important, especially during those times, and also shining a light on how women were just not acknowledged, that they even went to the Vietnam War because they were nurses. So everyone was like, you weren't in combat, so you don't need to go to the VA to get help because you're not a true military person. And so they were just treated absolutely horrendously. And so that part I felt was very important for us to see, to understand the effects that after war can happen to people, and how it can truly just alter their entire being and their minds without getting the correct help. So those were all the books I read for January. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I am not quite sure what my next video is going to be. Probably it's going to be going over my Valentine's TBR that I've read, or I might do another fun friend video. I'm not sure yet, so just comment below if you've got any ideas. So just like this video and subscribe, and please comment below what your thoughts are if you've read any of these books, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!